guys, welcome to The Bite. My name is Jackie. Today I'm bringing to you a very highly requested video for كعك and معمول. These are traditional Easter cookies that we would make every year. They're very symbolic and I will explain to you the symbolism along the way of this video. They are going to require some time. It's not difficult, but along with these ingredients, you're definitely going to need time and patience. These cookies are stuffed and we put dates, which is a very traditional one, and nuts. Usually it's either pistachios or walnuts, which I grew up with, but if you don't have those, this is not the time to go out to the store right now. So if you have pecans, if you have the Brazil ones, those will work just fine. I am going to go through with you each step and I'm going to bring out the ingredients needed for each step along the way. The cookies are going to be hand-shaped, hand-decorated, and baked, and they're just going to be so delicious and satisfying. I love making these every year. Even though this year is a little bit different for Easter with the quarantine and the social distancing, we want to make sure that there's a traditional piece that we are used to in our home. And that for us is definitely the كعك and معمول. So let me show you what I'm going to have. I do have the dough halfway prepared, and I'll explain why. But I have a few ingredients here, so let's go over them. So over here I have milk, some lukewarm water, yeast, sugar, and mahlab. So mahlab is actually ground cherry seeds, and not the typical cherry that we eat, but it's a specific species of cherries with little tiny kernels, and we grind them up, or you can buy them already ground, which I do, and they lend an earthy, kind of floral, and also kind of like fruity note. If you've ever eaten holy bread in like an Orthodox church, it has that distinct flavor, and it's from the mahlab. There's one additional ingredient that I don't have right now, and it's mastic, or which we call miska, which is Arabic gum, and it lends another very kind of sweet and very distinct flavor for this cookie. I'm kind of upset that I don't have it, but truth be told, this is not the time to go out to the store for one item. However, I'm going to explain to you how to use them. When you grind them, or when you get them, they'll come in like tiny little pebbles almost. And you want to take a mortar and pestle, add a little bit of sugar to the miska or the mastic, and grind it up. And it's going to take seconds before it all turns into a powder. But that plus the mahlab is what makes كعك and معمول what it is. Because I don't have that, honestly, you can do without either one, but those are traditional flavors for this cookie. Right here, I have the dough, and this is just the start of the dough that I started this morning. Some people start the dough 24 hours, even 48 hours in advance. I started mine this morning, and I am gonna go into detail about why in just a minute. For right now, I'm gonna put my lukewarm water in with the yeast and the sugar. And I wanna give it a good stir so that the sugar at the bottom mixes with the yeast. We're gonna add this directly into the flour, into the dry mixture here. And while this sits and blooms, let me tell you how I made this. In a bowl, I add fine semolina, flour, powdered sugar, salt, and lots of butter. I mix everything really well together from the bottom so that all the dry ingredients are saturated with the butter. Once this is done, your mixture should resemble wet sand. This gets covered and put away for 10 to 12 hours or even up to 48 hours until we are ready to add the rest of the wet ingredients. So now that you know everything that goes into the dough, let's talk about combining everything. I do want to mention, while the dough sits, every few hours or so, if you can, just come in and give the dough a good mix. The first time you do this, you're gonna notice that the dough is really dry, and it will need to be tossed like this. And the reason you do this is just to get the air flowing between all the dry ingredients. And it's really important to do that, otherwise the texture is just off. So I suggest to do it at least once, 2-3 times at best. And you'll feel the little dry kernels. You'll just want to separate those with your fingers or the palms of your hand like so. My hands are clean, I promise. Your hands are the best tool in the kitchen. I am a firm believer in that. So to this, I'm going to add all my mahlab. If I had the miska or the mastic, I would add it in here as well. I just want to toss it really quickly. Next, I'm going to add in all of the yeast, making sure that the sugar at the bottom is added in as well. So that's a good amount of liquid right here. We are still going to add milk. I'm not going to add all that milk, but I want to give this a quick stir. Whenever you're making any kind of dough, it's always a good idea to slowly add in the liquid so that way it can change depending on everything, depending on the air, depending on the weather outside. So many factors can change how much liquid you'll need in the dough. So what I'm doing is just adding this portion, and then we'll go in to add the milk. Some people make this dough with all semolina, some people make it with all flour. I prefer it with flour and semolina because I feel like the dough is less crumbly. Typically when you make this cookie, many times you will find that the dough is very crumbly. I worked very hard to create this recipe for you and get it up in time for Easter. This recipe, because I feel like it's a more tender dough and it just lasts better. I prefer it. So at this point, you can see it's still tacky, so it does require more kneading, but I don't want to over knead it before I add in my milk. So I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons. Usually this will probably require 3 to 4 tablespoons, but I'm going to start with 2 and we'll go up from there. I used to do this with my mom in the kitchen. She would have a big, huge bowl because she would make a much larger amount of cookies than I am. And she would have a big, huge bowl and she'd be kneading it and sitting on a stool, and I would just be watching her, and my job was to decorate the cookies. So you'll get to see my job very soon. Okay, I'm going to add a 3rd tablespoon. The dough is ready and looking beautiful. You can see that, first of all, nothing is sticking to my hands anymore because as I kneaded it, it all came off. The dough is just tacky enough. It's got a lot of moisture to it, which is good, and because it's a yeasted dough, it needs to rest. I have rapid rise dough, so it probably will only need 30 to 45 minutes. Otherwise, if you have active dry yeast, you will need to let it rise for 1 hour. I usually like to put it in an oven or microwave that are off, and you want to make sure it's covered. While I do that, something that's very traditional for me is anytime we make any kind of dough, my mom always does the sign of the cross with this part of her hand right here in the dough. So we just go like this and like that, and you can see that the sign of the cross has been formed. Again, these are symbolic of Easter, but again, any kind of dough, my mom would do this. So she would go like that and she would say Ism Salib, which means in the name of the cross. So I'm going to leave it like this, cover it, and stick it in my oven for 30 to 45 minutes. You will see it rise, and then we can shape the dough. The dough is in the oven rising. We're gonna start on our filling so that once the dough is done, we can start rolling up the cookies. So I have here 2 different kinds of nuts. I have pistachios, which are probably my favorite out of the 2, and then also walnuts. With that, you will need some powdered sugar and water, and that is just going to give them like a stickier substance so that they can adhere in the shape of a ball so that we can stuff the dough with it and shape it. And I also have my favorite, the dates. So I have here baking dates, which look like this, and you can get them from the Arabic store. It is literally just ground up dates, that's it, and they're pitted dates, obviously. My mom makes this herself, and she always suggests that I do the same thing, but honestly, I tested this recipe so many times this week. I needed to just get these because it's just so much more convenient. And if you look at the ingredients, all it is pitted dates. That's it. If you want to make it yourself, just take regular dates, pit them, put them in some hot or warm water so that they kind of soften, and then just put them in a food processor, and you'll get pretty much like this. I think doing it that way, they end up being a little bit more like fibrous, and you kind of get little stringy bits when you bite into it. So that's why I really like this. In the date mixture, I have cinnamon, I have nutmeg, and I have salt. I'm also going to add samneh. Now this is really important because samneh, which I have a video for, has a particular spice in it that makes everything just tastes incredible. I feel like it's our version of umami. It's that extra something that you can't really, It's distinct, but you can't put your finger on it, you know what I'm saying? The reason I don't use that for the entire cookie and I use regular butter is because the milk solids in the butter give it the texture. And believe me, I tried both ways. The amount of ka'ak and mahmoud we ate this week and my daughter ate, plus my parents had some, it's probably a world record by now. I'm just going to add a tablespoon of the samneh to the dates, and this just helps it to not be so tacky. I mean, this is literally sticky. So you need something to make it a little more pliable and workable. So I'm going to work this with my hands. I like to knead this with my fingers instead of using the palm of my hand like I would if I was kneading dough. You use the palm of your hand. This just keeps me from getting my entire hand dirty. As you can see, it is much more workable. It's not sticking to my hands. And a lot of times people will take oil in a little bowl, like kind of like this, and just dip their fingers in it and rub it in their hands so that while they're shaping the dates and the dough, nothing sticks. But this works just as well too. You can also use vegetable oil or regular butter in this as well. The flavor in the semneh is called hawajit de semneh. It's probably hard to find in your local Middle Eastern stores. I have a link down below to where you can find it online and have it shipped to you. My family usually gets it from overseas, but this link will get you something, if not identical, something very, very similar. So now that we're all ready, let's grab the dough. I forgot to mention the mixture here. So I'm just going to take, for about 1.5 cups of walnuts, I'm going to take maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons. The mixture, the cookies with the nuts do get powdered sugar on top because the nut mixture is not very sweet. The date ones don't get powdered sugar because the dates are already quite sweet. That's just typically how you do it, but you can always, for aesthetics, do powdered sugar on all of them. And then I'm just going to add powdered sugar to the pistachios as well. If you want it more or less sweet, give it a taste while you're mixing it to see if it's to your liking. That way you can adjust. I mean, start small and then adjust as you mix. So now I'm gonna add the water to both of them. Not too much. You don't want it to be wet. You just want it to be tacky so that it can adhere and shape into the form of a ball. So as you can see, the ground walnuts are shaping nicely, and that's what I want. Same thing with the pistachios. They are nice and tacky and able to shape into circles, and then our dates are ready to be shaped as well. So I'm gonna grab the dough and we'll start making the cookies. Look at this beautiful dough. I'm so excited. The many times that I tested this recipe, this was always my favorite dough because just look at how soft it is. Usually you have to feel dough to see how soft it is, but you can like see it. You can just see it. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy with it. So now, we're gonna start with the dates. I'm gonna show you a few ways to do this. I'm gonna start off with the way that I'm most familiar because this is how my mom would always make them and how I would decorate them. So you wanna kind of roll it in your hands just like this. You don't wanna play with it too much because it's a yeasted dough. And it will have to sit again if you mess with it too much. So you wanna roll it into a log like this. Then once it's in this shape, I mean, you can see like it's a little bit longer than my index finger. So you wanna take your finger and go all the way down the center, just like this. We're going to place a piece of the date right in the middle as the filling. So I'm going to grab about this much, less than the amount of dough that I have, and again, roll it into the shape of a log like this, and lay it right there. And then how my mom taught me was you push down with your less dominant hand gently so that the dough can close like that. So see how I've covered that part? Now I'm going to continue doing this all the way down, pushing very lightly and pinching with my more dominant hand to cover the date. So you are left with something that looks like this. And you don't want it to be the shape of a triangle. You want it to be the shape of a circle. So we're gonna roll it to get rid of that sharp edge. Ideally, you don't want to see any of the filling opening through, so this looks good. And then you want to just bring it around in a circle like this, bring the two ends together and pinch it just like that. Okay, so you're left with this. So this is shape 1, right? This is when my mom would hand it over to me on a little saucer just like this, and we would take these brass pinchers. We got these in Palestine overseas, but you may be able to find them in local Middle Eastern stores near you or online. So it's a cylinder, right? So we want to take our pinchers and very lightly, without exposing the dates underneath, pinch to create a little design just like that. Look how pretty. And you don't want to pull, because you could, let me show you what happens. If you pull, you risk removing that dough. You can always stick it back on by just taking it like this. When I was a kid, I would do that all the time, and my mom would be actually very patient with me, and she would just tell me, you know, be careful not to do that because you can expose the date and then the date can burn, and it looks just like this. Then you want to do the top. If you don't have this, I was lucky because my mom just sent these to me in the package with her ka'ak and mamul, otherwise I wouldn't have it. But you can also take a fork, and it's not gonna look the exact same, but you can do something like this, where you make little dots. And it's close enough. See what I mean? Not too bad. This cookie is meant to symbolize the crown of thorns that Jesus wore as he was walking to get crucified. So that is the symbolism of this cookie right here. Next option that we have for decorating is probably a little less time consuming. I take the same amount of dough and I push it together. With my thumbs, I kind of spread the dough out and I'm gonna lay it down. Take the same amount of dates that you had in the other cookie and roll it into a ball and place it right in the center of the dough, just like this. And you want to cover it with the dough. And then I got this tool from a local Middle Eastern store, and it has four different shapes. There's a small one here. This is actually for the nut filling, and so is this one. But this heart one and the circle one, which I love the most, is for the ka'ak cookies, which is the date one. So I'm gonna push this in, and sometimes people even put a piece of plastic wrap in the middle so that you can ensure the dough doesn't get stuck, because you do have to push it in to kind of stamp the mold on there. And you do just kind of have to slam it down just like this. Because there's enough butter in here, you might not have to slam it too hard. Another way to do the first cookie shape that we did is also probably a little bit easier. So again, kind of doing this with your thumb and making it a little cylinder and taking the same amount of dough yet again, placing that right in the middle of your dough and closing it up. You want to flatten it down slightly with the palm of your hand so that it's still in the shape of a circle, but it's got a flat top. Then you take a wooden spoon. They're all pretty much typically the same size. And you just put a hole right in the middle of it. And you shape it the same exact way as you would for the very first one. And that's what this one looks like. So again, these are all the date cookies. These are traditional shapes for the dates. My family always did this one. The reason I don't do this is because, again, the dates are exposed on the inside. So I prefer this one where the dough is all around. So now let's move on to the nut filling. So for the nut filling, same thing. You want to flatten some dough out with your hand, make it into a circle. Then take the filling of your choice. And you can see how beautifully the dough sticks together when you add the powdered sugar and the water together. You want to have less the amount of filling than you do the dough. So I'm going to put this right in there, and you can kind of make it more oblong, like an oval, because the shape that it's traditionally in is in an oval. And again, covering it up with the dough and sealing it and rolling it so that there's no harsh lines. And then this is a معمول mold. معمول is the one with the nuts. So we're gonna place it in here again, pushing it down, and then that is what this cookie looks like. So that is one traditional shape for the معمول. In my family, we didn't really use the molds. We really use the pinchers. My mom has like multiple of these, and I'm like, please send me one because I can't find one anywhere here. So I'm going to do this yet again and show you what we would do at home. So I'm doing it with the pistachio filling this time, just so that you can see that it's the same texture. So you take it and shape it into a dome, kind of like this. And again, taking my little saucer and placing it on there, and I'm gonna take my little decorative tweezers. And this, as I've been told, represents the sponge that Jesus was given that was filled with vinegar instead of water when he was thirsty. So these cookies are not meant to be like decadently sweet. I know dates are just naturally sweet, but we really don't put much sugar in these cookies at all, if you've noticed. So that is what this cookie looks like. I'm going to continue decorating. Real quick, if you do make small versions and some large versions like this, you don't want to bake them on the same tray because they're going to have different baking times. So make one tray of small, one tray of regular size, so that they bake evenly. I'm gonna continue decorating. When you bake them, you're gonna bake them at 400 for 15 to 20 minutes, and you'll start to see them turn golden brown. They will be golden brown underneath as well. You remove them, quickly remove them off of the tray so that they don't continue cooking, and then really you're ready to eat. I have no patience, so I eat them when they're hot, but you should wait till they're cool. So let me show you when they come out of the oven. Got my cup of tea, it's story time. Normally when we would make this, it would be me, my mom, my aunts, my cousins. We would all kind of join in, and each one of us had kind of like a duty. The kids would be the ones decorating. Some of the aunts would be rolling all of these into little snakes kind of like this and getting them ready for the ones that were making the dough, and some were getting the fillings ready, and then others were stuffing. So it was like an assembly line. We had a nice little assembly line going. So it's kind of sad that this Easter is not the same, but it's beautiful because one, thank God for FaceTime and Zoom and whatever else, we're able to see each other when we make these cookies, and just the memories behind them are very special. And I have my tea because we would always drink tea, spill tea. You know how it is. It's great how food brings everyone together. And that is one of the reasons why I created this channel, was to bring these traditions to life for you guys. Okay, the first batch came out of the oven. This was the one that I did on camera with you. I did this one off camera, and I just still have to decorate them and stick them in the oven, but I just want to show you the inside of these cookies. So this one is one of the nut ones, and it's a pistachio one, which I'm happy about because that's my fave. And look at how beautiful that filling is. And it stays intact because of that powdered sugar. So that looks absolutely beautiful. And then the one with the dates looks so good. So good. This dough is not very crumbly. So a lot of times when you get it, if you were to cut through it, it would be all like what we would call feta feet. Like it would just kind of crumble. And that is sometimes desirable to some people. For me, I like it to have more of a soft texture. So I really am happy with how this recipe turned out. Such a holiday cookie. So good. Okay, I'm gonna try this one. I love it with the pistachios. They are so good, out of this world. Arab Muslims also make these cookies during Eid, which is after Ramadan, so this is also a holiday cookie for them. I truly think this is one of the best ka'ak and معمول that I've ever had. I'm not just saying that, but I really did work in developing this recipe because I wanted to be something that I enjoyed, and sometimes I just didn't enjoy them because of the texture. I'm so happy to share this with you. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and let me know what your favorite ka'ak and معمول filling is. And if you make these recipes, don't forget to share with me on Instagram because I love seeing your recreations. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Bite.